नमस्कार दोस्तों, गीगाबाइट कंप्यूटर क्लास के इस डाटाबेस मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम के क्लास में हम आप सभी का स्वागत करते हैं। दोस्तों, आज हम लोग जानेंगे ये इंट्रोडक्शन डाटा मॉडल। व्हाट इज़ डाटा मॉडल? ए डाटा मॉडल इज़ ए conceptual representation of the data structure that are required by a database. Data model is a conceptual representation. डाटा मॉडल एक कंसेप्शन रिप्रेजेंटेशन है किस चीज़ का? डाटा स्ट्रक्चर का। दैट आर डिजाइंड बाय ए डाटाबेस, जो डाटाबेस के द्वारा डिज़ाइन किया गया है। द डाटाबेस स्ट्रक्चर्स इंक्लूड्स, ये डाटाबेस स्ट्रक्चर जो है इसमें होता है डाटा ऑब्जेक्ट्स, द एसोसिएशंस between data objects and the rules which govern operations of the objects। तो ये रूल्स और एसोसिएशंस के बीच में जो कंजंक्शन है, जो कनेक्शन है, द एसोसिएशन बिटवीन डाटा ऑब्जेक्ट्स एंड द रूल्स which govern operations on the objects। As the name implies, the data model focuses on what data is required and how it should be organized, rather than what operations will be performed on the data। To use a common analogy, the data model is equivalent to an architect's building plans। A data model is independent of hardware। डाटा मॉडल हार्डवेयर से इंडिपेंडेंट होता है और सॉफ्टवेयर constraints, rather than try to represent the data as a database would see it। The data model focuses on representing the data as the users see it in the real world। It serves as a bridge between the concepts that make up real world events and the processes and the physical representations of those concepts in a database। तो यहाँ तक दोस्तों हम लोग समझ गए इसका जो डाटा मॉडल जो है वो क्या है। अब मैथोलॉजी, अब ये मैथोलॉजी क्या है इसके बारे में हम लोग पढ़ेंगे। देयर आर टू मेजर मैथोलॉजीज यूज टू क्रिएट ए डाटा मॉडल। डाटा मॉडल क्रिएट करने का दो मैथोलॉजी है, मेथड है। इन entity relationship ER approach and the object model। This document uses the entity relationship approach। Data modeling in the context of database design। Database design is defined as design the logical and physical structure of one or more databases to accommodate the information needs of the users in an organizations for a defined set of applications। The design processes roughly follows 5 steps: planning and analysis, conceptual design, logical design, physical design, implementation. The data model is one part of the conceptual design process. The other typical is the functional model. The data model focuses on what data should be stored in the database, while the functional model deals with how the data is processed. To put this in the context of the relational database, the data model is used to design the relational table. The functional model is used to design the queries which will access and perform operations on those tables. कंपोनेंट ऑफ द डाटा मॉडल. अब डाटा मॉडल में कंपोनेंट कौन कौन से हैं? द डाटा मॉडल गेट्स इट्स इनपुट फ्रॉम द प्लानिंग and analysis stage. Here, the modeler, along with analyst, collects information about the requirements of the database by reviewing existing documentations and interviewing end users. The data model has two output. इसका दो आउटपुट होता है डाटा मॉडल का. The first is an entity relationship diagram which represents the data structures in a pictorial form. Because the diagram is easily learned, it is a valuable tool to communicate the model to the end user. The second component is a data document. This is a document that describes the details and the data objects, relationships, and rules required by the database. The dictionary provides the details required by the database developers to construct the physical database. Why is data modeling important? अब data modeling important क्यों है? Data modeling is probably the most labor intensive and time consuming part of the development process. Why bother, especially if you are pressed for time? A common response by practitioners who write on the subject is that you should no more build a database without a model, that you should build a house without blueprints. The goal of the data model is to make sure that the all data objects required by the database are completely and accurately represented because the data model uses easily understood notations and natural language. It can be reviewed and verified as correct by the end user. The data model is also detailed enough to be used by the database developers to use as a blueprint for building the physical database. The information contained in the data model will be used to define the relational tables, primary and foreign key, stored procedure and triggers. A poorly designed database will require more time in the long term. Without careful planning, you may create a database that omits data required to create critical reports, produces results that are incorrect or inconsistent, and is unable to accommodate changes in the user's requirements. डाटा मॉडलिंग इम्पॉर्टेंट क्यों है दोस्तों? यहाँ जो है हम लोग एक चीज़ समझ लें, जैसे हम कोई मकान बनाते हैं और उससे पहले हमारे पास ब्लूप्रिंट, उसका मैप जो है वो होना चाहिए, तभी वो एक्यूरेट होगा। अगर वो नहीं है तो फिर हम पूरी तरह से नहीं बना सकते हैं। इसीलिए जो डाटा मॉडल का इम्पोर्टेंट भी वही चीज़ है। डाटा मॉडल जो है इज़ प्रोबेबली द मोस्ट लेबर इंटेंसिव एंड टाइम कंज्यूमिंग पार्ट्स ऑफ द डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस, लेकिन ये बहुत ज़रूरी है। अब द एंटिटी रिलेशनशिप मॉडल, अब एंटिटी रिलेशनशिप मॉडल में द एंटिटी रिलेशनशिप मॉडल वाज originally proposed by Peter in 1976 as a way to unify the network and relational database views. जब नेटवर्क आया और रिलेशनल डाटाबेस मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम आया तो उसमें जो है द एंटिटी रिलेशनशिप मॉडल जो है इसका यूज हुआ। सिंपली stated that ER model is a conceptual data models that views the real world as entities and relationship. A basic component of the model is the entity relationship diagram, which is used to visually represents data object. Since Chen wrote his paper, the model has been extended and today it is commonly used for database design. For the database designer, the utility of the ER model is it maps well to the relational model. it maps well to relational model. The construct used in the ER model can easily be transformed into relational table. सेकेंड जो है इसमें it is simple and easy to understand with a minimum of training. It is simple, ये साधारण है, and easy to understand, समझने में भी आसान है, with a minimum of training, कम से कम ट्रेनिंग में. Therefore, the model can be used by the database designer to communicate the design to the end user. In addition, the model can be used as a design plan by the database developer to implement a data model in a specific database management software. थर्ड वन हो गया. A basic construct of the ER modeling. बेसिक कंस्ट्रक्ट ऑफ द ER मॉडलिंग. अब इसको हम लोग देखते हैं. The ER models view the real world as a construct of entities and associations between entities. Entities are the principal data object about which information is to be collected. ये बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है दोस्तों, इसको जो है हम लोग entities are the principal data object about which information is to be collected. Entities are usually recognized concepts, either create or abstract, such as person, place, things, or events, which have relevance to the database. Some specific examples of entities are employees, projects, invoices. An entity is analogous to a table in the relational model. Entities are classified as independent or dependent. In some methodologies, the terms used are strong and weak, respectively. An independent entity is one that does not rely on another for identification. A dependent entity is one that relies on another for identification. तो डिपेंडेंट जो है तो दूसरे पर निर्भर करता है आइडेंटिफिकेशन के लिए, और इंडिपेंडेंट जो है दूसरे पर निर्भर नहीं करता है आइडेंटिफिकेशन के लिए. Special entity types. Association entities are entities used to associate two or more entities in order to reconcile a many-to-many relationship. Subtypes entities are used in generalizations hierarchies to represent a subset of instances of their parent entities called the supertype, but which have attributes or relationship that apply only to the subset. Associative entities and generalization hierarchies are discussed